Is Google putting an end to AI content? Let's discuss. In this video, I'm going to be covering the new Google Helpful Content Update, how it affects AI content, and what it means for the SEO industry at large. So stick around, this one's going to get spicy. And if you're new here, my name is Curran. I'm the founder of Wordplay, which is an AI content generation tool. So I've been in the thick of this, doing a lot of research, seeing how this is going to play out. Let's hop into my computer and discuss. All right, so we're going to discuss a few things. First, how this Google algorithm works and how this update will be rolled out and how sites will be affected over time. Second, what are the red flags that Google is going to look at? So what they deem as helpful content and kind of what you should avoid. Third, who is this going to affect the most? There are going to be different types of sites that are affected more than others. And honestly, I think smaller site owners are going to benefit overall from this update. Lastly, how I think AI content should be used going forward. Surprise, it's really not that different from what I've already been kind of saying on this channel, but it's probably important to be a little bit more careful and take an approach that you want to help your users first. That is like really the goal of this update. Now, I'm going to start this with a caveat that I don't know for sure. No one knows what's going to happen here. And in the grand scheme of things, a lot of it just depends on what site you're running and how you're actually doing a lot of things on your site. It's not just the content. So with that said, let's hop into how this update works. This is directly from the Google website, and I've highlighted a few things here. So first, this could take up to a couple weeks for this to roll out. The actual update started rolling out earlier this week, and so we'll start seeing the Google search results kind of bounce around. Now, one thing I did notice here too is that sites identified by this update may see the signal applied to them over a period of months. So this isn't going to be something where you'll just see your traffic like completely fall off. It's going to be more of a gradual downturn if you're affected by this. If you're positively affected by this, it's probably going to be a gradual upturn in terms of like how much traffic you're getting and how you're affected. This will be a site-wide signal, so it's not going to be just like directly hitting one of your pages. So let's say you have like a couple pages that wouldn't be deemed as helpful content, but the rest of your site is, then it's going to be like those pages aren't going to be as much affected. It's going to be more of like a site-wide type of thing. Now, the interesting part here too is the signal is also weighted. So sites with lots of unhelpful content may notice a stronger effect. So what this also means is that these huge sites, so for example, something like Fit Small Business, it's like this site covers like 1 billion different things in business. And I think sites like this, where these are huge websites, and they have a lot of domain authority, but I kind of think this is probably the worst for sites like this that just discuss a bunch of different topics, aren't necessarily an expert on like one specific niche. Now, I may be wrong on that. Like maybe Fit Small Business, every single article is amazing. I don't really know. I haven't dug into it, but I do think that these websites with tons and tons of content about all of these different unrelated topics are going to be hit the hardest in this update. And that kind of takes us directly into this next topic, which is what is Google looking at and what are kind of the red flags that Google deems as unhelpful content? And basically, what is Google looking for with this update? Their main focus, it seems to be focus on people first. And in their very first intro, this is the part that everyone is talking about where people are worried about this targeting AI content. It says helpful content written by people for people. That is definitely like a straight up target at AI content. But whenever you dig into the actual content of like what they're looking at and stuff like this, it seems to be a little bit less focused on AI content and more focused on, hey, are you generating content that's useful for people? The written by people part, I mean, that's definitely the biggest sign that Google is targeting AI content. I generally feel like they're going to have a really hard time targeting it without also accidentally bringing down a bunch of sites that actually do have helpful content. Like for example, someone on YouTube, they commented, I found a GPT-3 output detector and it detects output GPT-3. Like, I don't think Google's that straightforward. One, I don't think they're going to put every single person's content into some output detector. I mean, that's just going to cost them so much money and processing power. But also, if they just did that, they would also be taking down a bunch of sites that have used GPT-3 and benefited. Like someone I'm sure on Forbes has used GPT-3 and used like AI assisted content to put out content on Forbes. So, stuff like that where it's like, I don't think it's that straightforward. You have to think of this in terms of like, there is a ton of things that Google is identifying, and their main focus is getting to like that people first content. So I don't think it's as simple as them just detecting that, hey, AI like helped make this content. We're going to in turn like de-rank you. I don't think that's going to happen. All right, so there's a couple things that I highlighted here in this Google blog. That red is definitely like bad for AI content. Yellow, it's kind of neutral. And then green, it could actually be kind of good for AI content. So first, here's the things that Google are looking at. Do you have an existing or intended audience for your business or site that would find the content useful if they came directly to you? And this is neutral for AI content. Like, it is more site-based. If you have a site that is super like niched down and you talk about one specific subject in depth, and you're using AI content for it, I actually think you'll be kind of benefiting from this. But if you're using AI content where, just like I was saying before, you're writing about a bunch of unrelated topics, this is going to probably hurt you. Second, does your content clearly demonstrate firsthand experience? I think that's generally pretty bad for AI content. It's going to be hard to like justify that. Depth of knowledge, though, like the second half of that sentence, I mean, AI has like read pretty much 10% of the internet, and it regurgitates a lot of the information that it reads. So in general, like AI also has a depth of knowledge. So I don't know, that could go kind of other way. Does your site have a primary purpose or focus? Similar to what I was saying before. I think if you're niche down and you have a site about a few specific things, you're actually going to be benefiting from here, even if you have a smaller site. All right, so that first part, it's focus on people first content. Like, is this content useful to people? I think this next one, avoid creating content for search engines first. This one's a bit tricky because honestly, if you look at anyone creating content for search engines, like yes, you're creating content that's going to be helpful for the user, but you're also creating it in a way where it's going to rank. Like, that is like the whole game of SEO. Like, all right, so is this content primarily to attract people from search engines rather than made for humans? That is a really good question to ask. And I think it ultimately comes down to the way you structure your blog posts, the way you structure your landing pages, stuff like that. That's going to start mattering, I think, a lot more than just like the words on the page, you know? So in a previous video, I showed this blog post. So I actually think this is going to start performing better, even though it was generated with AI content. That's because it quickly answers the query. And this is specifically made for search engines to like win the featured snippet, but also it answers the question of like the user coming to the website really, really quickly and in the most succinct manner possible. So I think actually Google rewards some stuff that is built for search engines, mostly because they want to do that zero-click content where it's like they're showing the answer on Google rather than taking them off Google to another person's website. So I think this one is a little bit goes both ways. Like, yes, you make content for search engines, but you also make it to solve the user's query or problem or whatever. All right, so the next couple things, I'm just going to roll through these real quick. Are you producing lots of content on different topics in hopes that some of it might perform well? Look, I think this all just kind of goes back down to like, what market are you in? What niche are you covering? And if you're staying on topic with that niche and you're creating content like with AI that is useful to the person coming to your website, you're probably going to be good. You're probably going to be in the clear. Are you using extensive automation? That is a part that is like kind of targeting AI content. Are you mainly summarizing what others have to say without adding much value? Kind of goes again with AI. It's like AI is basically taking in every single person's opinion, and the way you phrase like the prompt to the AI is going to be how it brings back that information and like what it learned and present that in its output. So I don't know if that totally made sense, but generally I think those two things are probably not great for AI content. But again, I think if you create content that's helpful to the user, you're going to be in the clear. This one's kind of interesting. Are you writing a particular word count because you've heard or read that Google has a preferred word count? That one's kind of funny to me. Like, obviously it just depends on the query. So if someone's trying to find like a bunch of information about something, it's going to require a longer word count. And if someone is trying to get a quick answer to a question, it's going to be a shorter word count. So I don't know, they're kind of being cheeky here, but ultimately it does matter, I think. And now going back down to this, how the update works, I wish I would have pointed this out earlier, but any content, not just unhelpful content on sites determined to have relatively high amounts of unhelpful content overall, less likely to perform well in search. So I feel like a little bit of a broken record here, but I think sites with tons of content that's unrelated and hasn't really been researched whatsoever is going to be the target here. Okay, so that kind of covers what this update is, how it's going to be rolled out, things to look out for, all that good stuff. Let's talk about how I think AI content should be used going forward. Again, this is just my opinion. Take it with a grain of salt. You do what you want to do, and no one knows what is actually going to happen. But generally, I think these small niche website owners like myself, and probably a lot of you guys, are actually going to be better off with this update. If you're generating a shit ton of content with AI about a bunch of unrelated topics, like, you might want to rethink your strategy here. I think you're going to get hit pretty hard with this update, in my opinion. Again, I don't know, but from reading all this stuff, that's kind of the thing that I'm deducing from this. Now, as for creating AI content going forward, I still think Wordplay is going to be a powerful tool to create a draft basically in one click. And especially if you do a little bit of research beforehand, this is still going to be massively beneficial, in my opinion. Granted, I'm massively biased, but I do think it's going to be helpful still. Let's log in. For some of you guys might not know what Wordplay is. Basically, you create content in one click. You can create it from an outline. You can create it from a title. So you could list a bunch of article titles, create a bunch of content all in one click. It gets basically your first draft out there. It's like 90% done. So what I think going forward, I think outline mode is going to be generally probably more and more useful, especially like if you're solving a specific question, you could still be generating the most helpful content with AI compared to the other like results that are showing up on the search engine, especially for the like super long tail keywords, by putting in an article title that like solves that query and then putting in descriptive subheadings that you know are like the main things that need to be talked about in that article. So I'll put a link up in the right-hand corner of this video. I just created a video that shows how to create like an effective outline and turn that into a blog post in like 3 minutes. It's a really quick video, but generally I think that using that method is going to be really, really powerful moving forward. And then also, if you want to do that still in bulk, what you can do is create it all in a CSV. And basically the way this works is you write the article title, try to make it descriptive and add intent behind the article title. And then you could put up to 12 subheadings here. Eventually, we're actually going to be adding in FAQs as well. So that's going to be coming next week. And maybe by the time you're watching this, it's already out. So it's going to allow you to create almost up to a 3,000 word blog post, basically from an outline. And I think that's going to be a really, really powerful addition. And then those FAQs, if you still want to use title mode, I'm still going to be using it for a lot of different things. Like, for example, we created a bunch of landing pages on Call Scaler, which is another software tool. Basically, this is all AI content, but it's laid out in a really clean format. Basically created a custom template where this is basically the AI content down here, but it's more to catch those long tail keywords. And not as many people are going to make it this far down the page. And more of this is actually as a landing page rather than like a blog post. So I think especially title mode is going to be especially helpful for creating landing pages like this. And then you can use it in conjunction with like making a custom template and then adding the AI content in there. So that's generally what I think is going to work in the future and how I think you should be using Wordplay. I'm totally still going to be using it. And just to close this video out, here's generally what I think is going to happen with the search engine results and how it kind of depends on what your strategy is and what your website is about on whether or not you're going to benefit or not from this update. So generally, I think that niche sites are going to mostly just go sideways. If you have really shitty content, you're probably going to go downwards a little bit, which probably should happen. But also, I think the websites where they just have like a bunch of content, that's going to be the ones that generally go down the most. So if you just have a niche website and you continue running it as normal, I think you're going to benefit from this update because these bigger websites who are ranking for a ton of different things are actually going to go down and you'll naturally rise above them just because you have more targeted content and you're talking about one specific niche rather than like a bunch of different things. If you think that's a spot on prediction, I'd love to hear in the comments below. Hit this video with a like if you thought this was useful. If you thought this was horrible, you can comment below as well. You can tell me what your opinion is. But that's generally how I feel about this. I think mostly like you're going to want to start just like focusing on helpful content, making sure that you're helping the person coming to the website, which you probably already should have been focused on. A lot of that comes down to design and how you structure your posts, how you structure your landing pages. stuff like that. But that's it for this video. Thanks so much for watching. Again, hit that like button. Would really appreciate it and helps the algorithms know that you enjoy this piece of content. All right. See you next time.